Brace yourselves for the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast. Welcome to the Sezl Simons podcast. We are the two Sarahs, and this week we're talking about cooking. Cooking! Oh, Sarah, do you like a bit of cooking?
Yes and no.
Thank you. The end. Goodbye.
It depends who I'm cooking for and what I'm cooking for. The daily grind of thinking what to have for your tea. I don't know, do you find this when you're cooking for the family and you go, what do you want for tea? And they go, dunno. And you've got to go, oh, well, sausages, no. Meatballs, no. Macaroni and cheese, no. Fish, no. And you've got to meet everyone's needs. You've got to surprise, delight, nourish them, but they've not got to have any input into it at all. That's the bit I find difficult.
Now it's just me and my husband and things have changed a bit. I'm actually really enjoying cooking. Or he'll make it because he enjoys cooking as well. I know what you mean about the boringness of it. And I love the idea of cooking. I'm surrounded by cookbooks where I'm sitting right now. I must have 500, 800 cookbooks. And I love them very specific.
Yeah.
In fact, let me just have a look. Just 1 second. This is like actual radio, isn't it? Me wandering about with stuff. I'm returned with two of my most unusual cookbooks. One is the Whoopie Pie Book. What's a whoopie, I hear you ask?
Yes, I was about to say that. A whoopie pie sounds like a recipe out of Viz.
It is somewhere between a macaron and a Jaffa cake. Raspberry and nectarine, chocolate mint whoopie sandwich, Christmas cake whoopie. So yeah, that's a very specific one. Obviously, I have all the Nigellas and all the Ina Garten, who is my absolute favourite, but we'll come to her in a bit. And quite a few of the Jamies. Don't have any Gordon Ramsays because I don't like him.
A bad person.
Here's the thing. I don't know if he's bad, but he does come across on the telly as quite rude unnecessarily, and I just don't like it. Be a bit nicer. He makes lovely dinners. Let's keep it at that. The other, most unusual actually, is the Wisdom of Oz cookbook.
Oh!
I went through a phase of getting really bizarre cookbooks off eBay, second and third hand. This is called Lullaby League Banana Fudge Sundays.
Oh.
5 Little Fiddlers Fruit Shake.
Oh, no, that doesn't sound quite as...
Oh, I don't want nobody fiddling. Some of these things, I think they were just trying too hard to make it relevant to the theme. Get this. Put 'em up pecan puffs.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
So I have lots of those kind of very specific cookbooks, and every time I go on holiday or travel anywhere, not even out of this country, out of the UK, you know, I like very specific regional cookbooks. So things people eat in Lancashire or in Kent.
Do you cook any of these things?
Nope, I don't. If I go into Waterstones, I find it really hard not to leave with a cookbook. Cuban street food. You know, not just a general. Because I tell you what I used to do years ago when I was in my early 20s and we were so skint, and the thought of me and my husband going on holiday anywhere at all just wasn't an option. And I used to get guidebooks. So I've got loads of guidebooks.
To places you're not going to go to.
But I'd like to,
Yeah.
like New England or Provence, all sorts of different places that I was super interested in. And there was absolutely no hope of us going there because we didn't have any money at all. Yeah, that was my thing. I used to get travel books.
So the cookery books are in the same realm of like things you'd like to cook, but you probably won't.
Yeah, because cooking I quite enjoy. Baking, oh, it's all rules, isn't it?
Ah, well, that's what I quite like about baking, particularly yeast baking. But I do a lot of yeast bakery. I'm good at making bread. I've got hot hands. So hot hands make good bread. And cold hands are good for pastry. Although I have found a way to make pastry, actually, without touching it with my hands.
Clever, Dick.
I do enjoy baking, and I enjoy the chemical changes. And I like the idea that actually it conforms to its own rules. It might say you prove for an hour, but it might not be proved in an hour, or it might have been overproved in an hour. You've kind of got to tend to it. You've kind of got to watch it. I made sourdough a few years ago, and that turned into such a nightmare. It was like having another child. It became just such a chore. But something like a sourdough, or something like where you prove the starter the night before, it takes all day to make it and it punctuates the day. That's one of the things I like about that routine of baking.
And kind of the ceremony of it as well. You know, that they're all kind of events.
Yes. I don't collect cookbooks, but I'm very interested in reading cookbooks. One of my favourite cookbooks ever was one by Catherine Whitehorn. It was written in 1961 called Cooking in a Bedsit. Have you come across that one?
I have not.
Written in the early 60s, around about the time when my parents had met and were kind of courting and everything. So it's about how to make delicious meals with maybe just one gas ring, no oven. It's a book about a lifestyle and sexuality to a certain extent. There's a chapter called The Third Paw, and that's because a dog has a thought for every paw: food, food, sex, and food. So she called this chapter The Third Paw, about inviting people over. Like, how do you woo somebody with a delicious meal at home? I really, really like that, really enjoyed that. And I've just been reading Mrs. Beeton in the 1860s, like 100 years before. Isabella Beeton and her husband put together 2,000 recipes, but it's also about the status of that food and how you manage your day and how you get servants to do certain things. And I find that stuff really fascinating. I cook some basic things very well, but I'm not a particularly adventurous cook.
Your bolognese is the best I've ever tasted. It doesn't feel like simple food. It feels authentic and it feels proper.
Yeah, well, you see, I think that is one of the reasons we're friends. The people I like best are the people who appreciate my dinners the best. I've got a mate, we've been friends for years, and he comes round quite often every Sunday, and I will make him something so basic. I don't know, gammon and parsley sauce, mashed potato and kale. And he'll be like, oh, legend, it's a fucking triumph. Like beef stew and dumplings or a roast dinner.
I can't be doing with making a roast dinner. There's too many elements to do at the same time. My husband makes a good roast dinner, but it's not worth the stress for me for an average roast dinner that I do.
One of the huge developments in my life is having an oven that cooks properly. It doesn't leave things raw on one side and massively burnt on the other side, which I've had practically for the whole of my life. And I feel it's a bit like cheating having a good oven. It's like you whip your Yorkshire pudding, you put it in and whoa, it comes out like gorgeous.
The oven section is the bit of baking that I find really magical. It's like, this is mental. I've got flour and sugar and butter and eggs in my cupboard, but if I chuck them all together and mix it round a bit and then put it in the oven, it's just magical and wondrous. Not that I can be arsed doing any of that. I'll be up Little Sainsbury's for a nice ready-made sponge. But, you know, in theory, it's total magic.
There's Nora Ephron. She wrote a book called Heartburn, where her main character is a cook. But one of the things she says about cooking is that you put in butter, you heat it, you add flour, then you add stock, and it gets thick, and you know where you are with life. You know that that's how things are going to be. And it's got this, as you say, this magical transformation.
But it's a predictable magic.
My mum, she was an incredible cook.
And did she teach you to cook?
No.
How did you learn to cook?
I learned to cook by myself when I left home. Her mother had no real interest in food at all. And in fact, her mother I think she had a terrible miscarriage. And she was given chloroform straight onto her face in the 1930s. This is my granny. And she lost her sense of taste and smell. She couldn't tell when things were burning. And she had no interest in food. And so my mum, when she was quite a little girl in Glasgow, but it was a neighbour who came from Manchester who was a brilliant cook. And my mum learned to cook. She went out of her way to befriend this lady and learn how to cook. And she very much felt that cookery was her domain and her power.
I can imagine though, because I know your mum grew up in tenements, wasn't it, in Glasgow, and there was a lot of poverty, and she had a really, really difficult childhood. That if you found something that you can do that can bring comfort to others and can give comfort to yourself, that you feel in control of, then that must be like, oh right, okay, this is my role, this is what I do, this is my power.
Yeah. Even when she was dying, poor lady, I went in, she wouldn't eat, she stopped eating, and the only thing she would eat was porridge. And I brought the porridge in, and she went, yeah, porridge tastes like shite English porridge. I remember going around to somebody's house, my friend Susie Potter, whose dad was a vet, and we had French fancies out of a box, and I was like, oh my God, this is such a treat, a bought cake. You know, my mother would like whip up a cake or make donuts or a batch of something. Everything was done from scratch. My family memories of my extended family are sitting around a table with a lavish meal that my mother had made. And yeah, that was obviously very powerful for her. Yeah.
Yeah. And that sounds like a wonderful thing. It really does. My mum made nice food. She made lovely food and meat and potato pies on making all the pastry and egg and chips with chip pan chips. And then all of a sudden it turned to, when I was about 7, 8, it turned to jacket potatoes. Jacket potatoes with vegetables, jacket potatoes with mince, jacket potatoes with meat and gravy. It was never a conversation. It's only really in the past 10 years that I've thought, oh, right, I was getting fat. I was putting on weight, because it's around the same time where I became aware that I was fat.
Yeah.
Through having a photo coming back and there being comments about what I looked like in this photo. And I was a little squidgy dollop, and, you know, the clothes were too tight. Buy bigger clothes.
Yeah.
Instead, we all ate jack and potatoes forever. Because, you know, at that point, I don't think there was very much conversation at all about how you cope with children who are putting on weight. I really do feel for my mum that she was going it alone with, how do I manage this kid? So we all just went on to jacket potatoes. So I never learned to cook at all. And it was only when I left home when I was 18, and I went to college, that I realised, oh, I don't know how to cook anything. My mum didn't do cake. If we had stuff like that, it was bought. I know that she was a good cook. She just didn't do it. And I suspect now it was because of my weight and because of her weight, even though she was tiny and always has been tiny. I think the biggest she's ever been has been a 14, but I think she felt very fat.
Again, my mother was also tiny, but worried very much about weight, worried about my weight, talked about my weight endlessly, even when I wasn't fat, because I wasn't a fat child. My weight went on in sort of later life. And I can remember my brother, when I was at uni, when I was starting to put weight on, my brother said, oh, I hate it when you come back because we never have anything nice when you're here. And it was maybe her way of trying to manage it without being tactless. But there were a number of other times when she did talk about it and was immensely tactless.
Same.
It wasn't that she was trying to spare my feelings all the time.
And my dad as well. Same.
Yeah.
What is the best meal you've ever had in your life? What's the best meal you've ever cooked? And is that the same as the best meal you've ever eaten?
I think one of the best meals I've ever had is one that I cooked. And it was a surprise. It was lobster mac and cheese. I made it about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's a Jamie Oliver recipe. And I got all the stuff around. The lobster was pre-cooked. I didn't have to kill the lobster because I don't know if I could have coped with that. As I was making it, because you taste as you're going along, it all tasted wrong. It was just wrong. And I was putting things in. I was like, Jamie, God, are you sure? And then, are you definitely sure? And then at the end of it, it just came together as this most amazing dish. It's just so incredible. And it was so delicious. Like, there's so much mustard in it. I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I do remember being so proud and so relieved at the end of it that this meal had, oh God, it was absolutely brilliant. What about you?
When you were saying lobster, I was bristling a little bit because you know that I don't like fish and I don't like seafood. And it's one of the things that me and my husband bonded over when we first met, because he doesn't either. And he always said, you know, I don't really want to eat anything that doesn't have shoulders. And I wish I did. I wish I did like seafood. And I will have fish if, like, I like tuna and I like some very basic fish and I like fish and chips sort of fish. But just generally, I don't know what it is. It makes my nerves a bit bad, especially like the stuff with different textures, the different seafood as different to just fish. The idea that something comes out of it, oh, mussels, you know, it's like scraping bits of snot out of a shell.
That's what I think about eggs. I don't mind eggs in something like a cake, for example. I don't even mind scrambled eggs, but anything like, oh my God, the thought of a soft-boiled egg.
I don't like them. Runny eggs. And I want to like them because you've seen it. Those lovely recipes that Nigella does, where she does something Moroccan and cracks an egg in at the end and it just kind of sits on the top and it looks all, oh, look at this. This is a complete meal in a very tiny pan. How marvellous. And all the colours are gorgeous.
No.
But I know I'd be on the toilet within seconds. Runny eggs are funny on my tummy as well.
All right, okay. No, I'd just rather she held the dog over it and shat on it than. Why would you crack and fry an egg on something lovely?
I get worried as well about the relationship between the chicken and the egg. As in, I don't mean, because I know it all comes out of a one hole, doesn't it? That the chicken has a hole for all seasons.
Does it? Does it?
The egg and the babies and the sex and the poo all comes out of one hole. Yeah, I know you're Googling that, and I think it's called a cloaca, which I want to say clacker. Oh, it came out of a clacker. Sarah's Googling as we speak. Look at this, is another thing in real time, like the radio.
Chickens do lay eggs out of their anus, but it's not as bad as you think.
Oh, well, that's all right. It's not as bad as I think, Sarah. And is it called a cloaca?
Yes, but when an egg comes out, the chicken's cloaca is turned inside out, so the egg cannot come in contact with the intestines. Oh, it's kind of like a revolving door in the chicken's arse.
Sounds like a game show. Is it poo or is it egg? Place your bets. When I was saying about the relationship with the chicken, we went on a side road talking about chicken's bumholes.
Well, I know, yes.
What I was meaning is, it worries me that if I've got a box of eggs in the fridge, chicken breasts next to it, and I'm thinking, what if they're related? Have I got some like Saw 12 type situation going in on the top shelf of my fridge, like some hideous horror film?
That's where Mother and Child Reunion comes from. You know that Paul Simon song?
No.
It is.
No, you're pulling my leg.
I'm not. Mother and Child Reunion. It's a Chinese dish on a Chinese menu.
Oh, Sarah. You've totally spoilt that for me now. My little boy's coming home tomorrow to visit, and I was singing that earlier. Mother and Child Reunion. Oh, now you're talking about blooming dead chickens and eggs coming out of arseholes. Totally spoiled that song.
You don't even get the same giblets of the chicken. What they do is they just like defeather everything and take their innards out and then just stick anybody else's innards in.
We've gone off on a quite disturbing tangent here.
Yes, and I think it's why you have to not think too closely about what you're eating.
Yeah, if I thought I'd be vegetarian, I'd be totally vegetarian. I might even be vegan if I thought about the relationship between animals and meat. And yeah. I know that's totally hypocritical. I know it is. But I can't do it because I also love meat and I love chicken and I love, all of that. Oh, yeah, this is where this came from, wasn't it? You asked me what my favourite meal was. One of my favourite meals, I didn't cook it. It was a pizza that me and my husband had in this little village near Florence. And it was this little village on top of a mountain called Fiesole. And the pizza was from like a van. And it was the nicest pizza I've ever had. It was like this super thin crust, like a tortilla. And it was beautiful and it was really, really cheap. And we were sitting outside and we were looking over Florence and all the hills and mountains and all the rest of it. And it was one of our first holidays. Can you remember that 10 minutes in the 90s where, you can go Manchester to Rome for 50 pence each way? Probably one of the reasons why global warming's gone a little bit bad. But yeah, we went to Florence and it was lovely and we walked everywhere and we got on the bus, because we're on such a tight budget, everything had to be the cheapest possible way. And so having this pizza that I knew was so cheap and so absolutely delicious with my lovely boyfriend sat on top of a mountain overlooking Tuscany was just absolutely gorgeous. And I remember having no idea pizza could be this delicate, beautiful, thoughtful thing. I had no idea it could taste like that.
Where you eat it can be really important because like one of the things I really love, we've got a fish and chip shop in Carlisle called Fontana's. We sometimes get fish and chips from Fontana's, go up to Bruff Marsh, look at the sea and eat the fish and chips. Yeah. It's bloody gorgeous.
Do you know, there's been a few times in my life, and there still continues to be, where I've tasted something that is completely alien to me and I really love it. I can think of 3 separate times. One was when I was about 17 and it was before I'd left home, me and my friends being out drinking down Grinning Rat, getting leathered, and then we went to a curry place. I remember the first time I had a curry. what is this? This is the best thing ever. And it was just out of my library of references in my head how it could possibly be made. What sort of witchcraft happens to put this taste together and make it so beautiful? I just thought, I've no idea how this happens. And then the next time was at college, went over this girl's flat called Tracy. She was a year older than me, so she was 19 instead of 18. So to me, that was, oh, she's very grown up. And she did pasta out of a packet in a pan, and then she got a jar of pesto and opened it and mixed the pesto in. And it was like, oh, what is this stuff? This is so exotic and so tasty. And it was one of those things that I couldn't fathom how that could be. And the other one was that same year was hummus. First time I tasted hummus. And then I realised you could get a small loaf and a pot of hummus, and that would be a meal or 2 meals. And it was relatively cheap, and it was very, very tasty and very filling.
Well, when you said what was the best ever meal you had, actually, probably one of the best ever meals I had really was on my honeymoon in Paris. We went to this restaurant. It was really fancy, and like I remember my husband at the time, he put a suit on, and I put on this strapless dress, which was terrible because every time you breathe, like your knockers just popped out of it. It was proper French cuisine, and we had about 7 courses, and halfway through we realized that we'd worked out how much it was going to be was totally wrong. We thought it was going to be about 50 quid, and it was actually going to be 150 quid. So it was very panicked because we were like, oh, fuck, have we got enough money for this? I remember it being amazing, but I can't remember what we had. I remember something had spun sugar on it. I remember something else was lamb, but you would have never known it was lamb. That was probably the best meal I ever had, but it was so overlaid with stress and anxiety.
You've made me think of that, which was very popular a few years ago, and I don't know if it still is. I don't think so. When it was like, here's a jar and I'm going to open it, and here's mushroom. Look, here's foam made out of beef, and listen to the sound of that. That's cheese. And I'd like to get in on that and think, yeah, that's art and food. That's a beautiful kind of creative imagining of food. I'm fairly sure I'd have all 20 courses, and I'd come out and I'd go, right, can I have my dinner now?
Well, what I was thinking about there was MasterChef. I love and hate MasterChef. We started watching it when the kids were when they were about 9 and 10. And it used to be that you could get through to the MasterChef quarterfinal with like a sliced tomato on a bacon sandwich. But now everybody's become much more sophisticated. There's rhubarb in everything, or there's rabbit done 3 ways, which sounds like a 16th century prostitution charge.
You see, the other thing about that sort of food that makes me nerves bad is I feel like everybody's had their hands all over it. Everybody's been poking it and doing shit to it.
I think as well, when you're cooking a meal that you're going to be part of, there are some times when you just fannied around with it all day and you just cannot be bothered.
Yeah, you can't bear the sight of it by dinner time. What's the worst meal you've ever had, or the worst dinner? Based on food, not necessarily based on company. I'll tell you mine while you're thinking. And it isn't that it was terrible. I was just mortified. It was the first time I tried. My husband's cropping up a lot in this one, isn't he? And he doesn't usually. He very much enjoys food like I do. And he's 12 feet high, and he's very slim, and he doesn't put on weight, and he loves food. And that was one of the things that attracted me to him, was how much he enjoys food. The look of it and the smell of it and the taste of it, as well as like, oh, I need a big pile of that because I'm hungry. One of the first times when I'd come to Nottingham to stay with him not long after we met, one of the things I could make is beef chilli, and I had to read a recipe to see how to make it. And it was before mobile phones, before internet. Couldn't just like look it up and have a quick go. You know, it was an effort. And I was trying to remember this recipe, and I was all excited about making this chilli for my boyfriend, who I loved and I thought was wonderful. And I put 2 tablespoons of hot chili powder in. It was meant to be something like half a teaspoon, and it looked lovely. Just before I was about to serve it, I tried it, and of course, being the greedy article, I took a great big dessert spoon and walloped it in, and it burnt me. It burnt round my mouth, it burnt my nose, and I was in pain. I had to sit for the rest of the evening with baby wipes shoved up each nostril and all round my mouth. I was trying to be, oh, look at me and my domesticness.
That's a terrible story. Mine's not half as bad as that. My mum, as well as being a brilliant cook, was also a very frugal cook. So if there were any leftovers, like if you ever opened her fridge, there'd be like a saucer with 11 peas on it and a bit of broccoli and half a carrot, and she used to do this thing where she'd go, oh, I can't really be bothered to make much, we'll just have a push buy with whatever's in the fridge. And it was always really grim. It was something like out of a gulag.
A push buy?
She called it a push buy.
Oh, I like that.
We'll just have a push buy. Oh no, my heart would sink. And it wouldn't be something whipped up with cream or anything. It would be carrot porridge or something. I used to get cross, like, I don't want a fucking push buy. I don't want a bit of turnip and a bloody sardine. I want a dinner. Yeah, more than disappointment. I don't even think I ever sat through a push buy.
Never heard that. Push by. Somewhere between a push bike and a drive by.
Well, it was a drive by, emotionally speaking.
Where do you sit with celebrity chefs?
My mum was always very sneering of Delia Smith and used to go, she's a journalist. But actually, that's what a lot of celebrity chefs are, people that have come out of somewhere else. Not Jamie Oliver hasn't, Gordon Ramsay hasn't. They've come out of
hell.
Yeah, of hell.
Not Jamie Oliver. I'm all right with him. I like Jamie Oliver.
Jamie's recipes tend to work.
And he's a trier, isn't he, Jamie? That's what I like. He puts effort in and he's a trier. All these other campaigning, which I absolutely think is wonderful. And I know that it kind of, people go, oh, you're a cook. Why should you be doing that? But I think he's recognised he has shitloads of influence and shitloads of power and he can make a difference and he's going to crack on and try. And it might not always work and it might come over a bit champagne socialist or it might come over a bit patronising, but he's going to have a go.
Yeah.
And I don't think him being super rich and super successful means that he can't also try and do something for the greater good. And I love that he keeps trying.
Yes, he does. That's very true. That is very true. I like Monica Galetti on MasterChef. I love the fact that she does. I mean, I have made mayonnaise about 20 times in my life, and every time it tastes like something that's come out of somebody's sweaty pants. It just is awful.
Oh, Sarah, you've upset me now.
You know, that's why you buy it out of a bloody bottle, honestly. Monica, like, she makes what's obviously a delicious mayonnaise, and it's that kind of, it's watching her do things with such confidence and skill that I love to see, but I probably wouldn't be able to reproduce. Well, I know I can't reproduce those things myself. I know who your favourite is.
There's 3 people in the world who I would probably cry if I met, because it would be too much for me. One is Dolly Parton, one is Bette Midler, and the third one is Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa. So she's on Food Network over here, but in America, she's absolutely massive. So famous and so popular. Now she's in her 70s and I think she was in her 50s when she started making programmes. But part of the reason I love her is that she's had other careers before. You know, she worked in the White House. She worked writing the nuclear deal. And when she left that job, she bought a little food place in the Hamptons, and that went super well, so successful. And the shop was called the Barefoot Contessa, that she started writing a cookbook and then had a TV show. The kind of food she makes, there's a lot of butter, there's a lot of fresh cream, she makes a lot of chicken, there's a lot of beef. It is not healthy food, but she don't care. She makes beautiful, luxurious, quite simple food. And she's super posh, but in a real kind of liberal way. But at the same time, she's really homely. She's a load of contradictions. That she's one of the most maternal women you could imagine, but she doesn't have children. I love the power of that you can be really maternal and really powerfully maternal, and your family isn't necessarily people that you're related to. And she always has a homosexual gay around at the weekends. No, actually, that's not true. During the week, because Jeffrey, her husband, is retired now, But he was, I'm talking like with friends, aren't we? Which makes me sound like a crazy stalker. But, you know, if the cap fits. Yeah, Jeffrey was a professor at Yale and also, you know, a big financial person. And so they're absolutely loaded. And all of her stuff is filmed in her massive house in the Hamptons. And she's so posh that normally when she's about to have a tea, her friend Michael from the flower shop comes round with his cashmere sweater draped over his shoulders, usually in like a peach shade, and spends about half an hour making a beautiful table up for her. Oh yeah, Michael comes round with 15 different types of roses, orange and purple, which are Ina's favourite. And I love her so much, right, that I made a plan that last time we went to New York, we went to one of the restaurants, which is her favourite restaurant. My son was, he must have been about 12 at the time. He was young enough that I could make him do child things that he wouldn't get embarrassed about. So I sent him round the restaurant looking to see if she was in. Go and look, see if you can find Ina. Do a full tour. Don't talk to anybody, but go around every single table and check if Ina's in. She wasn't, but I'd already made a plan that what I would do if I saw her or if I saw Bette. Didn't think Dolly would be there. She'd be down Tennessee, wouldn't she, Dolly? But Bette or Ina might be. And all I would do, I would just go up to them. I wouldn't even ask for a photo. I'd say, Miss Garton, I just want to thank you. And I'd do the same for Bette as well, for Bette Midler. Miss Midler, I just want to thank you. That's all I'd say. And then I'd probably go and have to, you know, somebody would have to get one of those heart machine things and clear, you know, to bring me back to life because I would have died out of total life fulfillment. So yes, I do have a favourite. She's Ina Garten and she's the Barefoot Contessa.
There was one bit where she was doing bacon and she went, I like to do my bacon in the oven so it's extra crispy. And she gets out this massive tray with about 400 slices of bacon. I'm like, yes.
And, you know, she's got a really good sense of humour and she's really camp and I feel totally empowered by her.
She's very gentle. She's very soothing. She's very calm. Yes, it's this idea of lavishness. Like she'll spread something on really thickly. You think, oh, that would be really lovely. One of the best things that anybody ever said to me, because my dad is a brilliant, or was a brilliant short order cook. He's still with us, but he's not in any fit state to be near a naked flame. And so if you sort of turned up out of the blue from somewhere, my dad would make you this absolutely gorgeous bacon sandwich or this absolutely gorgeous toasted cheese. And he would like accidentally cut himself when he was sawing the bread, and he quite often made the bread himself, and he'd chat to you and he'd have a little portion himself, and it would just be lovely. And I wrote about this and somebody said, oh, you're a bit like that. And I remember thinking that is one of the nicest compliments. And I think it comes back to this Ina Garten thing of the fact making this food and making it part of the discourse, of the friendship, that chit chat that goes with it, you know, that makes it so lovely.
It's about love, isn't it? Providing for somebody else, sharing that sensuality of the food, of what it looks like and tastes like, and also knowing that it's nourishing. It's love. It's giving love and taking love and sharing love.
Yes. This idea of baking, of breaking bread and sharing bread being such a positive communal bond.
It's a lovely thing to unite over, isn't it? And a thing that people are getting pleasure from. And also, the more we talk about it, the more I am slobbering, Sarah. So we've got through this entire podcast without making any Fanny Craddock jokes. So I think we should quit while we're ahead.
I hope your butterfly cakes all turn out like Fanny's.
Thank you. This has been Sarah and Sarah, the two Sarahs, Sezl and Simons, podcasting about cooking. Thank you for listening and do join us again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Middle-Aged Fat Lasses podcast. Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss an episode. And to find out more, visit middleagedfatlass.com.